So in this module, I want to talk about a few ways to make sure you don't get ripped off. Everybody's always worried about, if I send money to China, is that money just going to disappear down the drain? Or what can they do to screw me over? I've never dealt with China. These are people that don't speak my language. People get afraid all the time, and there's really no need to be afraid. Bad things do happen occasionally, but it's pretty rare actually. So if you're super worried and you've done your research and you've found the product and you've sourced it on Alibaba, Alibaba has something called trade assurance that you can do. Some factories don't like it, some factories don't mind it, and other factories will see it as a sign of amateurism when you actually want to use trade assurance. So it's up to you. A lot of people are totally comfortable with it, but what trade assurance allows you to do is basically an escrow. And so it allows you to actually pay into an Alibaba service. There is a small fee for it, and then Alibaba will actually pay the factory. And so Alibaba will actually take care of the factory's deposit, and then once the factory ships the goods and you've approved it, depending on the terms that you agree to, then they release the rest of the funds to the factory. So if you're really concerned, that can be one way to do it. A lot of times PayPal, a lot of factories take PayPal. Some of them will actually charge a little bit of an extra fee. They get hit with about a 4 or 5% fee over in China, so a lot of times they might tack on a little bit of a fee. PayPal is usually pretty good for samples and small orders. Larger orders, typically a bank transfer is typically the way to do it. And I've never had a problem with a factory ripping me off after doing a bank transfer in all my years of doing it. I would steer clear of Western Union. If they ask you to Western Union money, I would probably not do that. So if you've been using Helium-10 and you have Alta set up, you can actually pay your supplier that way as well. And that sometimes can save you some of the bank charges or maybe even the currency transfer fees from converting it from one currency to another currency. So those are some options as well. Another thing you want to always make sure, and I've emphasized this in a previous model, is make sure that ask the factory if they have any existing patents. Sometimes they actually may have a patent, or there may be a patent that exists that prohibit this item from being exported from China, or maybe the factory has a patent in the US or in China. So it's important to know if there's any kind of patents on it. And they oftentimes can either tell you or they'll provide the data, or sometimes they have no idea. But if you don't ask, sometimes they'll just go ahead and make the product for you anyway, and they don't care. So make sure you always ask that if that's an existing patent or not on it. Most suppliers actually want a good relationship, and so they're not really out to screw you. We're going to talk about something called Guangxi in just a minute. So that's a very big thing in Chinese culture that's really not so much in the West, but it's a major thing in Chinese culture. They want that relationship, and they want to go both ways. So they're not out to get you, but there are things that they can do that could hurt you. You know, some suppliers sometimes will say, hey, we'll lower the cost of your goods. You may be like, these duties are killing me. You want to bring them into the United States? I got a Trump tariff at 25%, and I got duties of 8%. This is adding 33% to my cost of my goods. And you're charging me $10 to make these things. Can you just put on the invoice that they only cost $3 to make? And some suppliers will do that. And that way, basically, in effect, lowers your taxes by like 70% that you're paying to bring into the United States. That's illegal. So don't do that. But some suppliers will offer to do that. And if you don't know different, it can get you in trouble. And U.S. Customs they kind of know the value of things when they come through. And they have a database. And if something gets flagged in there, it could be a problem. So don't do those kinds of things if someone offers to do that for you. Another thing is you always want to have an inspection company actually inspect your goods, an independent inspection company. So you're going to pay your 30% up front typically, and then the 70% is not going to be paid until that inspection company comes and takes a look at the goods. And the goods need to be on the dock ready to go. Not here's a few samples we just made, come check them out. No, it needs to be if you order 1,000 units, those 1,000 units need to be packed in their master cartons, sitting on the pallets, waiting for the truck to come pick them up to take to the ship. The inspection company comes in and randomly picks some of those pallets and goes through random boxes. The factories hate this because it makes a mess. They got to repackage stuff. They just absolutely hate it. But that's the best way to protect yourself. And later on in this module, I'm actually going to show you an example of an inspection report that you should be getting so you know exactly what to look for when you're doing this. Another thing you want to ask your factories is, do they have any certificates? Do they have the UL certificate if it's an electronic item for the US, or the CE if it's for Europe? and where are those certificates issued from? Are they issued from Asia, or are they issued from those countries? That can be an important factor. Or if it's an FDA item, are they already registered with the FDA or the EPA or the equivalent in Europe? Those are important things as well to know. Also, be sure that you get your factory to agree to fix any defects, whether those are found in the inspection or later on, maybe after the shipment has arrived. Let's say 3% of your customers return the items because something's wrong with the item. It wasn't found in the inspection, but just something got damaged along the way or wasn't assembled right. See if your factory will actually reimburse you for those. They're probably not going to pay you out of pocket and say, here's some money in your bank, but see if they'll credit those towards your next order. So if you can provide them proof, when you do the inspection, that should be easy to do. The inspector is right there and they can fix the problems. But if it's later on, maybe you can provide them a report of your returns from Amazon the next time you order and say, look, I had 17 returns on that last batch of 1,000. You're charging me $10 a piece for these. Can you credit me $170 on the order? And a lot of them will do that, and they'll just add them to the next order, or they'll add them to the next order. If you order 1,000, they'll make you 1,017. Depends on the factory. But those are some things you want to keep in mind to make sure you don't get ripped off either. Now in China, they really don't want to lose face. Face is important to them in China. One of the things you can do is if you're speaking with your agent is an English speaker, if you have the opportunity, praise him or her in front of their boss. Goes a big way in China to actually say, oh, her English is very, very good. Good job in hiring her. Those kinds of things go a long way in Chinese culture. And so anytime you can do that, that's great. Gifts go a long way in Chinese culture. For like Chinese New Year, sending the little red envelopes with some money in it. Or when you go to visit, or even if you don't go to visit, if you can send a gift from your local country to your factory of something that's unique to your country. They love that kind of thing, and it goes a long, long way. Family photos are big, for vacations and holidays. Asking them for family photos from the Dragon Boat Festival, or sending family photos from your recent vacation. It personalizes it, and those things can go a long way and help you in negotiations and getting better service, getting faster turnarounds. So all those things are important in that culture. Another thing you want to make sure you do to make sure that you don't get ripped off is make sure you have agreements that they can't use your images. A lot of these, you might create some really cool images for your packaging or your product, and sometimes these will end up on Alibaba, or they'll end up on the company's website, and they'll freely use them. So you got to make sure you have agreements in place that say they can't do that. And the same thing goes for them exhibiting your product at a trade show. You don't want them at the Canton Fair showing your product on the shelf unless you've given them your approval to do that. So you don't want your hard work getting out there for other people just to easily copy, because it's not so much the other Amazon sellers that might see it, it's other factories that are walking by and they're scouting out the other booths, and they're like, ooh, look at that, that's a cool modification, let's do that. And they might not have seen that otherwise because they weren't searching for it on Amazon. Another thing you can do in China to protect yourself is what's called an NNN agreement, and that stands for non-use, non-disclosure, and non-circumvention. And basically what that means, these have to be written in Chinese, so they can't be written in English. They have to be written in Chinese and drawn up under the Chinese law. But basically non-use means that the factory, if you create a custom mold or custom design, they can't use that to sell that to other customers. If you don't have that in place and you create something special, a lot of times these factories will take that and use it to sell to other people. And they'll use your mold and just take your logo out and put the other person's logo in. So make sure that they don't do that. The non-disclosure means they can't tell anybody that they're making stuff for you. So if some other Amazon seller calls them and says, hey, do you make stuff for Kevin, his company? They have to deny or say, no, we're not allowed to say that. That's the non-disclosure. The non-circumvention is they can't go around the back door. They can't say, well, we didn't do it, but family culture in China is big, so maybe their brother-in-law down the street owns a factory, and so he did it. And so that's a circumvention where they kind of do a little workaround to it's not actually them doing it, but it's somebody else, and they kind of aided in that process. So if you're worried about that, you can get an NNN agreement drawn up that can help protect you. Now let's talk about Guangxi a little bit. Guangxi is got 5 major components to it, and it's basically the social networking or the social etiquette of Chinese culture. And it's, like I said, it's composed of 5 components. The first one is trust. And that trust goes both ways. The Chinese culture, they want to trust you and they want you to trust them. So they will do almost anything to make sure that trust is not broken. And it's a huge deal in Chinese culture. They also, the second thing is respect. They're very, business culture and business interactions in China is very family oriented. You'll see a lot of family type of things in that culture. And so, like I said earlier, photos of vacations or mentionings of holidays or what did you do are big deals. So if you can share with them, and when they share with you, show appreciation to that, that can go a long ways in helping you get more Guangxi in dealing with the Chinese culture. Another thing is losing face. Like I said earlier, they will avoid being embarrassed at all costs. You know, if you ask them, can you do something? Maybe they have no clue how to do it. They will say, yes, of course, we can do it. And they'll try to figure it out later because they don't want to be embarrassed and say, no, I have no idea how to do that. So they'll just say yes to everything. But that doesn't mean they'll actually follow through and do it or be able to do it properly. So you got to be careful with that. They'll do anything to not be embarrassed. Another thing is that in the Chinese culture, they're extremely competitive. And you can see this with some of the people from China that sell on Amazon. It's a super competitive. They'll do almost anything to get ahead, and including sometimes breaking the rules. And so in Chinese culture, because there's 1.5 billion of them, to stand out, they have to be competitive. And so it's a super competitive culture. And so keep that in mind as well. And so, but you can use that to your advantage when it's competitive, when you're saying, well, you know, if you tell me a price of $3.52, but the guy down the street who makes stuff for Coca-Cola is telling me $3.40, I'll just go with him. They're going to be like, no, we're better than the guy that makes stuff for Coca-Cola. We'll give it to you for $3.39. So you can use that competitive nature to your advantage as well. The other thing is the value of time. They really want to cultivate and build relationships over time. It's a big deal, and that's why going to visit your factories in person or meeting them in person at a trade show, or if they fly to the U.S. and are going to the ASD show or something in Las Vegas, if you're able to go out and meet them, those things can pay off in dividends. The price of your airfare and your hotel and going out there can come back to you in droves and better deals and better pricing down the road. So always try to meet them in person whenever you possibly can. Now, what I want to do now is I want to actually show you an example of a inspection report. And this is something that, remember, I said you should always do, whether it's your first order or it's your 100th order with the factory. And even if the first 99 orders were all perfect, you still have to do it every time. I don't know how many people I've seen that's like, I did this like 10 times and it just delays things. It costs me money. The 11th time they get it comes, and it's a huge disaster. Inspection reports, as you're going to see in this example, are 20, 30 pages long. They have pictures of everything. They'll weigh things. They'll smell things. They'll drop them. They'll check for little threads. And there's certain parameters that you want to look for to make sure that you don't have any major defects at all. You have very few minor defects and very few cosmetic defects. But let's take a look at an example of one, and I'll walk you through it just so you have an idea. All right, this is an actual inspection report from one of my products from several years ago. And as you can see in the top right corner, this inspection actually failed. And let's take a look at this report. This is for an ab roller that I was doing. And you can see the main picture there of the ab roller spread out. That's how it's supposed to look assembled. You see the two wheels, the handlebars. It has some foot straps that attach to your foot to actually give you some additional function. That's one of the ways that I differentiated this product, is with these foot straps that attach to it. And you can see here, if you look at down here, there's something called an AQL. And the AQL is the main component. You can look at, over here, it was 2,000 pieces that we did, and on this particular run. And you can see here that the sample size was 200 over here in the remarks. And the maximum allowed critical mistakes was 0. So if something was just really bad, even one critical mistake, this whole thing would have failed. Major errors or major problems, we're allowing 7, and they had 0. So there's no major errors and no critical errors. But minor errors, out of 200, they found 14. They found 17. If you can see there in the red, the 17 right here in red. But the maximum was 14. And so this particular item failed. Now there's standard AQL measurements, and these are pretty standard here. You can adjust these. If you want to allow a critical mistake, you could say, I'll allow 1, or you could change the major to 10 or the minor to 15, but these are just the standard in the industry, so that's what I left those at. And then you can see here where they checked the quantity to make sure it actually was 2,000. It passed, the specifications passed, the product packaging passed, and the measurements passed. So if you scroll on, you're going to see that this is a very, very detailed report. I did not provide them what's called a golden sample. You can see here in number 1, they say there's no golden sample available for comparison because I did not actually have a sample to send over to them. But if they had that, they would have used that to compare. If you see in number 2, the inspector actually showed the samples to the factory and advised the factory to repair them. And they noticed that metal staples were used on all the boxes for the shipment. And you can see here there's a picture. They took a picture, and you can see on the right-hand side here, there's a couple metal staples. That's, instead of taping this or gluing this, the factory took the easy way out, the fast way out, and just put these staples in. And I didn't really like that, and so we had a little talk about that. I didn't make them redo it on this one, but they were not allowed to do that in the future. You can see here, this is the inspection standard right here that we were going by, and the not alloweds. And randomly, they chose 20 cartons at random out of the shipment. And even here, you can see they list the carton numbers that they actually chose totally at random. They didn't let the factory say, here you go, here's the stack over here, check these out, the rest of them are all shrink wrapped. No, they're like, no, we're going to pick at random what we want. And then you come over here, they'll actually notice what they noticed. They noticed a dent on the steel bar, a dent on the wheels. Looks like 6 of them had indentations on the foam handle, and so on. So you can see all these minor defects that they found, and that's what caused this inspection to fail. So what happens when an inspection fails like this is I tell the factory, not only do they have to fix these 17 errors that found, they've got to go open up all 2,000 of these boxes and check for these things again. That's why the factories, they detest this. So they had to go in and pay their workers to go in and like literally reopen everything and see how many more of these problems they found and try to fix them. And then I sent the inspection company again after they supposedly had fixed everything to see if it would pass at that time. And it did pass that time. So still with a few minor things that you're always going to have. It's hardly ever a perfect inspection. There's usually a few little glitches. But let's take a look here at some of the other things that they found. You see here they'll take a photo. There's the dent. And they show you, they put a little measuring tape there to see the size. Here they show something on the wheel. They're showing the dents on the foam, the dirty bag. So they'll take pictures of everything. This is how valuable an inspection report is. So you can actually see, and you can see here, look at this one, there's a big indentation. If a customer gets that, they may think it's used. And the Chinese factories will say, oh, no, it's no big deal. Who cares? Like, no, in the Western culture, it's a big deal. People will think that's used. I might get a bad review on Amazon saying that I sold them a used as new product. You can see on this foam that the foam is messed up. Someone might think that's damaged or used if they got that. So you got to be really careful here. There's another big indentation right there. It's just from the way they packaged it. They didn't package it correctly. So all the problems, the inspection report shows the photos here that you can see of everything that they found. And you can see here there's a little string hanging off. That's common, but they should catch that and clip that off. That's not as big a deal as those foam issues. But you can see here where they're taking a look at the specification. They'll take a look at the packaging. They show here the packaging, how they're packed, what the size of the boxes are, if there's any differentiation. They'll make sure that they've done the correct box, outer box, a triple wall, double wall, or a single wall. They'll make sure all the gluing, everything, they check everything. And then if you scroll down here, a little bit more, they'll do a carton drop test. So right here is what I have them do is they took 3 cartons, and the factories hate this too, and they drop it. And it'll say here from the height they drop it. Usually I ask them to drop it from 3 meters and drop it to the ground and see if anything breaks inside. And some factories refuse to let my inspection company do this, and if that's the case, then we usually fail the inspection because I want to make sure that everything is packaged correctly and it doesn't move because this stuff's going to get thrown around like a football when it's shipped and it's shaking on the sea, and UPS guys are throwing it around everywhere. But you can see in this case everything passed. And then they'll inspect the product. They have a product checklist. They'll make sure that all the items that are supposed to be in the box are there because the user had to assemble this. You know, and these are some of the things that I would tell them here. Pay more attention to, for the below points. Make sure there's no rust or discolorations on any of the metal bars. They need to look like they're new, because sometimes we get these metal bars, and you can see here in the picture, look at the one on the left, it looks all rusted out. No customer wants that. I told my factory, I sent this picture to my factory and said, look, make sure they're all really clear like this. I didn't know this until I got a return from a customer that some look like this. And so I said, make sure the gift box coloration, number 3 up here, it doesn't look like it's dull or faded. It should be bright and colorful. Make sure the master carton size is 10 units, not 20 units. At some point they were packing them 20 units to save money because it's less cartons. But when those ship into Amazon, it actually cost me more money. It cost me more money to ship them by UPS. It's over the 50-pound weight limit. I told them make sure there's a three-wall outer carton. Sometimes they'll do a 2-wall to save money, but I want a 3-wall for better protection, and so on. You can see this is what an inspection report looks like. There's some more things I hear about the colorations and make sure the mats doesn't have indentations and everything. So these are things I specified. And if you come down here and look more, they'll actually do measurements. They'll measure the knee pad. They measured the wheels. They measured everything. They check the weights, and you can see the weights of some of these boxes vary just slightly. So they'll check all the weights. Then if we scroll down a little bit more, they'll show pictures of the outer carton, and they'll show here, you know, where it was going and which carton number it was, how they look inside. So they're basically your eyes on the ground. And they'll show the outer boxes, the color boxes. More pictures here of the product, showing the different views, so I can check and make sure everything's okay. And then they'll show all the parts that were inside, the instruction manual, make sure it's actually printed correctly. They show the front and the back, so you see the plain back side, so I can make sure that they didn't mess that up. They show all the individual parts. Here's all the individual parts up close of each one. And then some more of the parts. Let's keep scrolling here. They'll measure the box to make sure the carton width is actually what they say it was, because that can make a difference when I'm preparing my shipping or my freight going into Amazon. They actually put it on a scale and weigh it and show you a close-up picture of the scale. You can see here. They check the barcode. They actually scan the barcode, make sure the printing didn't blur on the barcode, so because that could get to Amazon if that wasn't printed correctly, and Amazon can't read it, and they're going to charge me to put new labels on there. Here you can see the inspector is actually taking a close look at it with her hands. You can see how she's using it. And in this picture over here, she assembled the product. In picture number 46, she's rubbing it. She's taking a towel and rubbing it across the logo to see if it wipes off. Sometimes the factories will use an ink that easily fades off or wipes off. So she's deliberately trying to see if it wipes off or not in this picture. And then she actually stretches the band in picture number 47 here. And a little pull test to make sure it doesn't snap. And then she actually gets down on the cardboard here and actually tries to use the product and shakes and sees how it works there. And then here they have it in the little bag that it comes with. Another picture of her actually rolled out using it. Everything in the little bag, storage bag. Actually a box dropping, the carton box test, number 52. And then what they look like after the carton box test. So this is how detailed an inspection report is, and why you have to do it every single time. Pictures of the factory building, pictures of it ready to go on to the ship. Here's all the things that she inspected, the stack of everything that the factory has to put back together, and a final little report that shows that she was there. So this is why you have to do this every single time. And there's some additional information here, but it's invaluable, and it's your eyes on the ground. So always do an inspection. You can do some of these for like $100. It won't be quite this detailed. This company is Topwin. That's who I use, and they charge about $175 to $250. Depends on where it's at. But they have offices all over China. They have some in Vietnam and other countries as well. There's other companies like Asia Inspection. There's several that can do this kind of thing. But this is, no matter where you're manufacturing, especially in Southeast Asia, you've got to do an inspection. So I just want to give you an idea here of what an inspection report looks like and what you can expect. So hopefully this has helped you out, and we'll see you again in the next module.